Hello, Gonky. Are you there?
Can you hear mover? Am I in?
Awesome. Hello. Welcome. We're going to try to get through this one the first time. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, welcome to the Mover and Gonky show with Gonky this time.
I'm in uncharted territory right now, mover. I've never actually been in part of the intro.
Don't jinx it, man. I was going to do the AOL dial-up, but I'm scared because last time I did it, we lost Gonky.
Keep a good
hello,
thing
how are
going.
you, man? Yeah,
Good, man. How are you?
I'm here. We are here.
Yeah,
we got a lot to talk about today. We have probably the most controversial show so far to date. It's only been 3 shows, so we're doing that. So today, our first topic, we're going to talk about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, UFOs, maybe aliens, maybe interdimensional beings, maybe Al Gore in a spaceship.
Maybe balloons, maybe.
Yeah. So what kicked this off and why we're talking about it? One, I made the mistake. So I'm writing a sci-fi novel right now. Like the flag, by the way. Like the cup. That's cool. I'm writing a novel right now, and it's sci-fi. My first attempt at sci-fi, and it maybe talks about UAPs. A couple years ago, I did a breakdown of a video, which I'm going to show you because I want to see your breakdown. But this week, I'm not going to show the article, but House Oversight hearing on UAPs to be held July 26. Reps confirm. And they're talking about declassifying all the UAP stuff. We wouldn't have stood up an organization at the Pentagon to analyze and try to collect and coordinate the way these sightings are reported if we didn't take it seriously. Of course, we take it seriously. Some of these phenomenon we know have already had an impact on our training ranges for when pilots are out trying to do training in the air and they see these things. They're not sure what they are, and it can have an impact on their ability to perfect their skills. So already had an impact here, and we just want to better understand it. John Kirby said, National Security Council spokesman. And then, of course, there's Chuck Schumer's announced new legislation to declassify the records related to UFOs. So I recently did a breakdown of recently. It's been a couple years. And this UAP aerial phenomenon came out, and they basically said, there's a whole lot of stuff out there, and we don't know what it is. Gonky, have you seen anything in your travels that you were like, oh my God, it's Bigfoot?
You know, the only thing that I thought I was seeing something was actually I was in the airliner over Michigan late one winter night, and everybody on frequency started talking about this light, and way up above us, there was this weird light. What it ended up being was the Falcon X.
Yeah,
but
Elon Musk.
Yeah, it was really cool to see, and you know, that was the only weird thing. I've looked for ET out there, but I've yet to be successful.
All right, well, so this is the famous declassified UAP thing I broke down and caught the internet on fire. I want to show you the video as a Hornet guy, and you tell me your expert opinion. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready, sir.
Let's do it. For those on the podcast, we're watching a FLIR video of a black dot.
That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. It is now. Look at that thing.
Mode 4 okay, that's good.
Glad when that works.
Yeah.
It's good at
Don't
the ship.
shoot.
Yeah. They're on autopilot and barrel out to 25,000 feet.
Fighter pilot standard.
Rizzo's excited about being able to track something with the pod.
This is calm discipline.
Can you box moving target?
Well, they're in the same jet.
Oh, okay.
3.7 miles. Dude, that's pretty close.
Dude. Wow. Look at it fly.
So they're closing on it. 150, right? V sub C.
Yeah. Yeah, but how small would it have to be at 3.7 miles to be that? I mean, that's a tiny target.
You know, I've got, I don't know, hundreds of hours of looking at through an AT FLIR. Did you guys have AT FLIR in the F-16?
No, well, we had the Lightning. I flew
Lightning?
the Lightning.
Okay.
The Lightning pod.
Anyways, AT FLIR, and I've got a lot of time looking through this. And I've watched this video a couple times, and honestly, I don't know what to make of it because to me, it looks authentic. I don't see anything that leads me to believe that it's anything other than real, but I can't really explain what it is they're looking at other than a blob that's, you know, emitting some sort of IR signature. So I mean, mover, you've looked through the AT FLIR as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
Spent
mean,
a
what
lot
do you
of time
think? I
with
mean,
the AT-FLIR.
yeah, I mean, I don't see anything in there that's like, that's,
Yeah. So I broke this video down, and one of the things I just wanted to talk about the differences from, people were like, it did crazy things that nothing can do. And there's nothing in these videos that's like, this thing did something
right.
out of this world. It didn't do anything crazy. This just looks like a track, and we just don't know what it is.
Right. But
compared
usually,
to other
dude,
stuff.
I mean, the one thing I will say is like, usually, like if you're scene tracking or auto tracking one of your buddies, you can see the thrusties.
Yeah.
So you can see the propulsion going on. If it's a jet, I've never looked at a piston prop job, but I mean, you can see the propulsion, and like, I don't really see that when I look at that footage, but I mean, again, I don't, I'm a little lost for word. It's something. And I think they're looking at something real. Is it a UAP, UFO, X-Wing fighter? I don't know, but it's something for sure. I mean, it's a real object out there.
Yeah. The truth is out there. And so, I mean, this is a hot topic, right? People want to talk about, did you see anything in your travels or flying and all that? And my thing is, there are two scenarios here, right? Either they're out there and we know about it, or they're out there and we don't. And equally, the two are equally horrifying to me, because if the government knows about it and it's this big conspiracy, they've done a great job of covering it up for, X number of years. But if the government has no idea, then we're in trouble. We're just in trouble.
Well, if you remember, I mean, there were so many of these sightings going on that they started to put it in the NOTAMs.
Yes.
Heads up, funny things out there we can't identify.
Yeah, I mean, that was around the time of this 2021. We were talking to Raptor guys, and they were like, "Yeah, I saw this thing out in the warning areas. Didn't know what it was."
Yeah, that was down here in Florida. That was, I mean, so this is that's Sex Fravor's tape. That was West Coast. They've had reports off the East Coast, and then down here in Florida as well. At least on the military side, I know I've heard about it, and you have too, Mover. So
yeah,
what it is, I don't.
Why is it always Navy guys though?
Well, if you're an alien race, you want to study the best of what another species has to offer. So of course you tangle with
been out to sea for a really long time. Start to see things out there. I don't.
No, dude. I heard we had a couple Raptor guys tell us some stories about seeing some stuff.
Well, they're also prone to hypoxia. So
true. That's true. Was it a hypoxic event, or was it an actual alien encounter?
You're not helping your case here by throwing the Raptor guys under the bus. But you will see. I mean, I have seen stuff that later, like you're like, oh, that's unidentified, and then later they're like, oh, that was this, just like you were talking about. Whether it's a tethered balloon, you go out in the Southwest, they got the big weather balloons that are tethered, and they're like, hey, there's a NOTAM out here. You're like, oh yeah, that's what that was. Well,
the only thing I will say is that I listened to Joe Rogan had Fravor on, and I listened to the whole thing, and it was. And I started flying the Hornet when he was the skipper. So like I was flying the Hornet during this time period, and I didn't hear anything about it, but it's kind of a small base, and I know he has a good reputation, and I listened to his uninterrupted recollection of the event, and I mean the things he was saying is like I mean, you don't cut across the circle to get a closer look at a balloon and then it out accelerate you kind of thing. I mean, he's talking fighter pilot stuff, doing moves against this thing, and it's moving, So I don't know. I don't know. It's strange.
The other scary part to me is that it could be tech from other countries.
Yeah.
If it's some kind of, whether it's low altitude cruise missile testing, some kind of drone technology, stuff that, we don't even know that they have, and they're out there gathering intelligence on the world's greatest Navy, as you pointed out. And they're trying to figure out, where are your troops and can I go there and count them?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's the DoD interest, right? We need to know, yes, there might be something out there. We just need to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. There was have you heard of the Skinwalker Ranch? People who keep asking me about this on the Twitter.
I have. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't pay much attention to it. But
There was the theory of the wormhole between, in the Utah where they're transiting. And that's
Right.
all that stuff is fascinating to me, but and as I'm finding out with writing sci-fi, I'm not smart enough to do the physics and do the math and go, this makes sense or this doesn't. I just know
you can't come up with real nonsense.
I could. I've tried. The problem is I get there and I'm like, well, this doesn't, some nerd out there is going to be like, Mover, you need to open a physics book. Yeah. You need to, there's going to be some, Stanley ruins Mover, and then the circle of life has continued.
Yeah.
And it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But I have seen, especially on NVGs, you will see everything that, because you don't, the human eye is limited, right? It's limited, especially at night. And then you put goggles on and you're like, oh, that's a shooting star. Was that a SAM launch or a shooting star? Oh, it's a shooting star. Is that an airliner? How many guys have you heard try to rejoin on the airliner outside the airspace because it looked like their flight lead?
I had an F-16 fly underneath me and blower over Iraq, and I thought I was getting shot at by Sam. So yeah, I know what you're talking about, dude. So yes, you can definitely confuse things. I mean, based on your perception, because we're visual creatures, right? I mean, it's
I hate to disappoint people because, they'll come to this and they'll be like, hey, what have you seen? Are they out there? And, I grew up watching X-Files and Unsolved Mysteries. I want to believe, but there was a thing out yesterday that said the universe is 26 billion years old. It's twice as old as what they thought. Are there ancient civilizations? Is there life out there? Sure. I mean, we'd be arrogant to think that we're it, but have they visited Earth? I don't know. It's just like the ocean thing we talked about with Ocean Gate. There is a huge amount of space that we've never visited. We don't know anything about. We may never know about.
Right.
So there's just a lot out there.
Yeah, it's a big universe out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, any reattacks on that one before we move on? Mr. Producer, do we have any super chats?
We can check in. I've got Gonky, when you land on a carrier, do you go to mill power in case you miss/jump the wires? I was thinking it might be too late to add power when you realized that you had missed.
Bonnie, thanks for the question. Yeah, in fact, if you don't go to at least mill power, they give you what's called a cut pass, which is you get like 2 of those and your career is done flying. So yeah, you go to mill power. If you're slightly below average ball flyer like myself, you go to burner just in case, because why not? And if you miss the wire, or I'm sure some of you probably seen, the cable snap sometimes, but the E2 kept flying away. So if anything happens, you want max power on the airplane, and they rig the gear for that. So there's actually a whole process that goes on the ship with the arresting gear. If it's a Rhino, they'll set the arresting gear for a certain weight. If it's a Legacy Hornet, they'll set it for a certain weight, and they take into consideration the fact that you're going to be in the power when you land. So yeah, you definitely at least mill power.
We've got a couple of more that you can offer feedback on if you choose. Do these super chats pay for Gonky's hotel room so you can have real internet, or is it Taco Bell or Wendy's?
Gonky's, look at the background. Look at this. Gonky has moved. Look at the evolution in 3 episodes. Look at what he's got.
Now hold on, Adam. Look, dude. Thank you for the super chat. Though actually, the only reason why I'm in my office doesn't have a door, and I have small children and a very understanding wife. But I had a water line burst in my daughter's room, so I'm down a room. So I was forced to use this, and I think it's working out. I don't know, Mover, what do you think?
I think this is the best we've seen so far. I hate to jinx it, so let's keep going with the show. We'll get back to the super chats.
Thanks,
and the reason
Adam.
We're doing the super chats and not just everybody is because that's not the intent of this show. Mover Mailbag is where I answer everybody's questions.
Plus, we get a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is thank you. Yeah. When you put a pretty face on like Gonky, you get more questions, so we have to narrow it down.
Thanks to the background, man.
So the next one, this is your topic, Gonky.
Yeah, Airbus this week, for all the aviation buffs out there, they had an Airbus A321 run off the runway. So Mover, I think, or Doug.
Got it queued up, sir.
There's a video. Press play,
I'm ready,
sir.
All right, and let us begin. Wow. We'll just mute it. We don't need to listen to them.
Oh, dude, the best part comes at the end. Not the screaming. It's the thrust reverser. So the runway's wet. Looks like. Oh, we're getting to the end of the runway. You can tell by the stripes. So they went off the runway. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. Obviously, the runway is wet, so I thought this would be good to talk about. You know, I know Mover. Gosh, it's been a couple years ago. You made a pretty good video about like the differences between flying commercial airplanes and fighters. It's pretty dramatic. So last week we talked a little bit about the takeoff part being kind of dangerous. You don't want to mess around, right? So with the landing, you know, I play that video not to speculate, not to lay blame. It's more of an illustration of, you know, an airliner, when those guys come in to land, I was really amazed coming from fighters, because the Hornet, it was basically, I think it was like 6,000 foot of mid-length runway. If there's more than quarter-inch standing water, take a trap. That was like your landing guidance. Nothing out of the ordinary. Well, having flown the Airbus, before you land at any airport, the airplane will start squawking at you. Hey, put in the destination data. And what it wants to know, exactly the runway, the approach, exactly the weather, the runway conditions, everything, because it's going to calculate the exact distance and what type of braking that you need to get it stopped. And there's all kinds of safety factors built in there. So I know these guys did that. The airplane will just squawk and yell at you. There's no way you can miss it. It's just a good example of, like, even in the States, like every year or so, you know, especially in the winter, an airplane runs off the runway, and you put in braking conditions too for in the winter. But these guys touched down on a wet runway, and I don't know if anybody's ever taken a look at aircraft brakes, but they're like race car brakes. I mean, it's got anti-skid. There's like carbon fiber. I mean, they're really, really good. Even in the wet, I'm really surprised at how good they grab. But you can tell it wasn't going as planned, because towards the end, those guys engage the thrust reversers, and usually that's something you initiate like at touchdown. You put the thrust reversers in. These guys obviously saw the runway coming up and were like, "Oh, she ain't stopping." So I've had a couple incidents where I thought I was going to go off the end. Probably the worst was in a Hornet, Super Hornet, where I landed on a wet runway just like these guys did. And I stood on the brakes. And it's one of those things where you push on the brakes, you get a lot of braking, and then you start pushing more and there's no more. And you got what you got. And I used every inch of that runway. And I did what these guys tried to do. I actually turned off the end at the exit on the paved surface, so I didn't go off, but that was close. So you can do everything right, have the performance data, and you can still have accidents like this. But it's just a good example of, like, hey, takeoff and landing is no time to joke around. I mean, I don't know, Mover, you've got a little bit of time in a Boeing product. You guys are, when you land them, I mean, you get the landing data, the whole 9 yards, or what?
Is there ever a time where you wouldn't use thrust reversers in the Airbus? That was like every. Really? Yeah. Okay. So in the 737, it was every landing. You're always on the reversers. Yeah.
In fact, our SOP now is use so they call it green procedures, right? Trying to save
for the environment.
The environment. So instead of full flaps, it's like one from full. So flaps 3 and then no thrust reverser. Which it wouldn't surprise me it wouldn't surprise me if that's what these guys were doing. And you can put that in, and if the data comes back as it can do it, you do it. You have the data, right? But I mean, like I said, you can do. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like,
on this than me.
No, it wouldn't surprise me, if these guys, did everything right, and it's just so happened, something like this.
Yeah, that adds perspective, because I would have thought, oh, well, they forgot to do the thrust reversers, because, the no thrust reversers, and then they go off the runway, which means maybe one caught, the other one didn't, something. But that's interesting.
Yeah, no, I read that. I read that in one of the speculations that, hey, one thrust reverser engaged, which caused them to swerve. Which I will say, also part of the green procedures is min thrust reverse. So basically idle reverse. And I will tell you, if you don't get the throttles or thrust levers all the way into reverse, you'll have one that pops and one that doesn't, because this happened to me. And even at idle, the yaw is significant. It will
No
wake you
kidding.
up.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hey,
so
Gonky, you've taught me something today. I mean,
Yeah.
I had no idea. These are all new facts for me.
well, yeah, what's funny is I fly some of the guys I fly with, if it's even remotely slightly short or wet, they're like, dude, we're doing flaps full max reverse. I'm like,
Well, that's like
okay.
single engine taxi, right? Everybody, it's like for let's save the environment, but nobody does it because it's such a risk
Yeah.
that you will forget something.
100%.
A pack or something will be off, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh God, I got to
Yeah.
do this whole checklist right before we take off.
Yeah, nothing's worse when you're like, cruising around Newark. There's 100 airplanes around you, and the
Yeah.
captain's like, start number 2. You're like, huh?
Yeah. What? No. Oh, wait. Come on. It's the Airbus, dude. What is it? Just on? It's just
That's
switch
true.
on. You don't have to do the conductor drill.
No, that's true. It is much easier, but still, like, I mean, for a guy that doesn't fly much, it's hard. Come on, man.
Yes, that one switch is obviously straining all of your capabilities there.
But hey, the moral of the story is thankfully nobody got hurt, so we can all learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I don't have anything to add because 737 is a totally different beast, and that's
Probably
that's
has
a good
better
topic.
brakes, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it has pretty good brakes.
Yeah,
I mean, do you
they
have
all
the
do.
brake settings? You check, like it goes RTO 1, 2, 3, just max. It depends on how
Even
the
easier,
runway
bro.
surface is.
Low, medium, and max.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ludicrous speed. Go.
That's right. This is built the Gonky spec.
Mr. Producer. Sir, let's take a
Sir.
moment for our kids at home.
Let's kick over to that.
Yeah. What do we
So-
have?
Go USS Princeton, Spy 1B radar detecting the contacts in SoCal and vectoring jets. Any feedback?
There's so many words. I don't know what it even means in there. Gonky.
Well, I think what he's talking about, USS Princeton is a ship with probably an AESA radar detecting contacts off the coast, vectoring airplanes over there. I mean, that's kind of what happened with Fravor there. Basically the footage that we watched is they were out doing a totally separate mission, and then one of the ships detected these objects and basically gave them real world tasking. So it took them off their briefed and planned mission for real world tasking. They didn't have any weapons, but they got vectored over there. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but thank you for the comment.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, also, we've got Modman. Could Gonky please talk about the Navy/Air Force pilot
Gonky.
training exchange program? Thanks.
Gonky gets internet and a mic, and suddenly this is
Yep.
the Gonky show. I'm just gonna go play with Luna for a little while. You just let me know when it's over.
No, I
Have
need
at
you. Yeah, the Navy Air Force pilot training exchange program. Well, Mover's done. He's been in the Navy too. We've exchanged
Air Force Appreciation Tour.
a couple of times,
Yeah.
between us. So, I'm a little confused with the exchange program. So, I was part of the exchange program when I first joined, and it was basically roughly 5 Navy student pilots would go train with the Air Force, and 5 Air Force student pilots come train with the Navy. That program went on for quite a while, and I don't think they're doing it anymore. And the hard part, at least when I was there, was basically the grading systems weren't the same. So the Air Force had a much more complicated, if you can imagine
Strict.
that.
Stringent.
Big words. Much more stringent grading process. Where in the Navy at the time, it was literally down, below, average, above. And in the Air Force, it was like, 5 stars, underline, exclamation marks. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And when it came time for the Navy guys to be put back in with their other Navy brethren for selection night to figure out how well they did in primary for either jets, props, helos, or whatever, the formula that they used was up for debate on if it was fair or not. So that was one of the issues with the program. Every single person I've talked to who is an Air Force guy that did the Navy part, they loved it. So
Sorry, I blurred out for a minute. I was having Gonky issues on my
yeah,
end.
dude, bro, get your internet fixed, man. Come on.
That wasn't the internet. That was the camera.
Come on. It's 20, what year is it? 2023. But yeah, so that was, I mean, as far as the program goes, that was, you know, it's good to know how the other services work, because in real combat, we're supposed to work together. And it has served me well. When I came to the T-38, I actually flew with guys that I flew with in UPT on the Air Force side. And it really is a small community. Even, you know, the fighter community itself is a small community, but military aviation in and of itself is small. So it was good.
Yes. Be careful who you aggravate. That will come back to haunt you when you apply for jobs later.
True.
Be careful. Short memories too. Yeah, I don't have anything to add about that. There's it's one is kind of a choose your own adventure, and one is more of a structured do it this way or else you shall not pass. So, yeah. All right. Well, moving on, Gonky, it's still
Yes, sir.
you, dude.
All right.
I really planned this.
Doug, are you
wrong.
reading
I think
it?
Doug's going to help us out here.
Read the
about
highlights?
The Indian Navy.
Can do.
Hit the highlights, Mr.
It's,
Producer. Doug, dude, you're going to be the next star. You guys don't need me.
I'm a professional voice.
He's the voice of reason.
So this is from Aviation Week's website in their Defense Aircraft and Propulsion section from July 14th. Steve Trimble wrote, Indian Navy decision further seals fate of Super Hornet. I'm going to read until you guys tell me to stop. The announced selection by the Indian Navy of a French fighter is another blow to the future of Boeing's FA-18EF Super Hornet assembly line in St. Louis. Boeing had already announced plans to wind down FA-18EF production in Missouri by 2025. But held out hope that potential orders in India could extend U.S. assembly operations by a year and keep the fighter in production on a new assembly line on the subcontinent. So they were going to sub out to India. India's Navy announced the selection on July 14th of the Dassault Rafale M to become its next carrier-based fighter. So we'll likely cease production around 2025, said Bern Peters, Boeing's Vice President of Business Development for Air Dominance Programs. Indian Air Force still has a requirement to buy 114 new fighters under the medium-range fighter aircraft program, but delays in the selection progress could mean the Super Hornet is no longer available. Boeing is not yet commenting. Want to keep going?
No, that's good.
You got what you need?
You got what we needed.
Yeah, no, hey, thanks for reading that, because I can't. The font's too small. My eyes are too bad. Yeah, so 2025 winded down the Super Hornets. So selling fighters is a big business. So I know I've talked a lot about doing the Royal Malaysian Air Force thing. But really what that was the FMS deal, right? Foreign military sales. So I kind of got to witness Boeing marketing and trying to sell the Super Hornet. And it's not just for money. It's also, I think, like sales of like the F-16, the F-15 to other countries, you know, keeping the production line open. So the way it is now, 2025, the production line is going to close in 2025. So in order to keep it going beyond that, they need to sell airplanes because it's a business. So, you know, by not getting any customers, it hurts the U.S. forces as well, because when the production line stops, you know, if they ever need specific support from Boeing, it's not going to be there, because Boeing's in the business of making money, and they're just not going to keep expertise and parts lines open for no reason. So the Indians chose the French fighter. And what was weird was when I was in Malaysia, I actually got to meet with the Rafale rep, the guy trying to sell the fighters to the government. And he was very French. And it was pretty amazing. Doug touched on it a little bit, but, you know, a lot of these countries like India, Malaysia, they not only just want to buy like a Western fighter, but they want the technology. So like a lot of these deals are like, hey, we'll buy your fighter, but we want to be able to build parts of it in our country to enhance our aerospace technologies. And basically what they're looking for is some independence, right? Because if they go fight somebody and for whatever reason we cut them off, they want to be able to support their own airplanes. So I know with the French, you know, there were a lot more open to that idea than Boeing was. You can argue all day on which airplane's better. The Rafale is a very good airplane. It's on the Charles de Gaulle, and we actually got to fly with those guys off the Charles de Gaulle when I was on the Stennis. And I think I had one sortie where we did like 4v4 BVR against them.
Nice.
Now, we truth be told, we weren't out level 11 on them, but BVR struck me as flying a lot against like another Hornet, and our training got to go out and dogfight one of them, and I asked him how'd it go, and he said it's very similar to fighting a Hornet. So if you look at the specs, like the thrust, the weight, it's all very similar. Granted, it's a delta wing, but it's very similar performance to the Hornet. I personally think Super Hornet's a better airplane. But
well, so you and I did a breakdown of a Rafale versus a Raptor. Don't get me demonetized again saying any jokes about any fighter aces from the United States.
That's correct. I will not.
But as you can, by what you just said, that goes back to why it's so ridiculous, because a Raptor, they're not bringing the A game for that. That's interesting.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, like, it kind of, if you look at, the Indians picked the Rafale based on the fact I think they were going to get the most technology sharing. And then also, I'm not sure if it mentioned it in that article or not. I cut Doug off, but in addition to buying just a fighter, you're buying a maintenance plan, a training plan, and I'm not talking just for pilots. It's to maintain the engines, maintain the airframe. I mean, it's a multi-year billions of dollar kind of thing.
No, it's infrastructure. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of it is U.S. aid. So they use the U.S. aid packages to support, the billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar contract to support it. Did you see, Mr. Producer might be able to find this. No pressure, Doug. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Do you remember back, because I think this was even in the article before we cut Doug off. So Canada cut the Super Hornet. They were going to get the Super Hornet, and then they're like, nope, we want Fat Amy. And
big mistake.
Part of it was because of the Airbus A220, that whole thing with that jet, the Bombardier or whatever that it was before the A220, and how Boeing kind of made them mad with some of the stuff they were doing on the airline side. So it wasn't even related to the fighter side. It was what they were doing on the airline side that then became something. But if you recall, and I don't know who made this, it was probably Boeing, but it was this awesome Twitter video, a social media video, these two kids playing. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was the kids playing. Oh God, Doug, what are we doing? Oh, there it is. Look at this. He's got it. But Boeing suffered near misses on potential contracts, selected the F-18 as an interim solution in 2016, but a Boeing initiated trade dispute against Bombardier in 2017 prompted, and that's the A220. Yep. But the script of this little video with these kids playing, and they were talking about, what do you have? He's like, I've got the super brand new F-35.
Stealth.
How many do you have? Yeah, it's invisible. He's like, well, how many do you have? Just the one. And he's like, well, what do you have? He's like, I got a fleet of F-18s and support and 10-year warranty and stuff. And that goes to what you're saying, where, you're buying the maintenance packages, the missiles. And I love that you talked about them bringing their own hardware to it, because I just did a video with the the Hellenic Air Force, and it's a different IR missile. They're not using AIM-9X. They've got their own that they've created. Same thing with the Israelis. They have adapted their own tech, sometimes even better, to, existing platforms, and that's kept the Viper alive too.
Well, the Rafale itself is actually France saying, hey, Typhoon, you're taking too long. I don't like where this is going. So the Rafale was almost purely French jet for that very reason. They wanted to maintain, their ability to create a frontline 4th-gen fighter and support it. But the Indians, like I can totally see why they did what they did, mainly because their Air Force also flies the Rafale. So there's some commonality in there, and India is a big country, but compared to the U.S., a smaller military like the Indian Indian Air Force and Navy, there's that commonality is going to save them a lot of money. But being American, I think the Super Hornet would have been a better airplane, but it is what it is, and I just hope somebody does. I hope somebody does buy it, Mover, and keeps the.
Well, that's another article in itself. Kuwait, they just like no kidding, a month ago, they released the funds. You know that had been delayed because of COVID. They got the contract in 2018. They built them in 2020, 2021, and then the jets sat because they couldn't deliver them. So now that process is, it's being uncorked.
Yeah.
But like you said, nobody else to buy them. The assembly line shuts down. And I wonder if they're going to pivot to the EX, because that is what's keeping, the F-15 assembly line open is the EX. And there are countries that want to buy that too.
Yeah. When I looked at the specs that the Royal Malaysian Air Force was looking for their MiG-29 replacement, and it just screamed basically Strike Eagle. But I told them that. I said, hey, these requirements more match the Strike Eagle. And they said the Strike Eagle is too expensive. So
it does come down to money.
It does come down to money. And the Hornet and the F-16 were kind of the lower budget 4th gen options. So, but yeah, so hey, I think Indian Navy's getting a good jet. I've flown in and around Rafales, and they're a pretty awesome airplane, but pro America. America.
America. We got to support our Vipers and Hornets. And
that's right.
Even Fat Amy, as you will. I mean, it's a good, we make fun of the Fat Amy, but it is a good airplane.
Yeah.
I mean, it does have a lot of cool tech. It's not and that's why we call it Fat Amy, because it's not your stereotypical sleek, sexy fighter. It's just this like do everything technological marvel that's going to do a whole lot of cool stuff, but not look the coolest doing it.
It's beauty as defined in 2023, Mover.
It's beauty on the inside is what it is.
That's right.
It's not.
He's a hell of a cook.
We're off the rails. We're canceled now. Mr. Producer,
Probably.
do we have anything from the audience?
Yeah, we get a couple more. First of all, somebody owes me £2.
Uh-oh.
And then some sympathy for Mover. Mover, would you be willing to go active duty or full-time reserve if it meant you got to fly the F-22?
Why does the drink?
Bro, got too excited it made it blurry.
It's your internet.
Is this a job offer? I need to know before I answer this question. If it's a job offer, I'll consider it. If it's not a job offer, no.
Modman sounds like a squadron commander call sign, so be careful.
Yeah. You just got your dream shot. I don't know. I mean, I would say you'd have to go to Alaska or Virginia.
What Mover's trying to say is he's an older man now with different priorities, and young Mover would jump at the chance, but old Mover's back hurts too much.
I would do it. I mean, like Boise's getting Vipers. I'd go to Boise to fly the Viper. I mean, it's a different community. Is it too late now to learn a new community? Maybe. But I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't say no to anything, but it's not going to happen because the F-22 community for sure does not want Mover within its ranks.
Or
guaranteed. Yeah, Mover. The two faces you see up here, persona non grata. Sorry, next.
And Adam he's not a first-time caller because he called earlier, but anyway, long-time listener, first-time caller. Mover, have you struggled with the loss of sensation of speed getting out of a fighter into a car, or getting out of the ARCA car and getting into a car, or getting out of the ARCA car and getting to the Lemon's car?
No. Doug, you've asked me this, right? Because I've raced your car after driving the 01 at the same track, and I've raced, Pale Horse, and I've raced the ARCA car, and I've raced the ARCA car and Pale Horse on the same track. It's relative. We talked about this previously about task saturation and living in the moment. There is nothing better for me than racing or flying a fighter when you're in that Zen-like moment, because it doesn't matter. There's no sensation of speed. There's nothing. It is just pure focus, and the world kind of disappears, and all you're thinking about is what's in front of you and what's happening. So I don't even think you get the sensation of speed, especially as big of a track it is as it is at Daytona. You don't get that at 180 miles an hour, and you don't get that at 120 miles an hour. I think it's just it's relative to what you're doing, and I think your mind adapts. Just like when I go fly helicopters, I don't feel like, oh my God, unless I'm going cross country, then it feels like it's taken forever. But other than the time clicking by, I mean, you can make anything relevant. You know, I go down to 10 feet in a helicopter. Well, that's going to feel faster. And if I go down to, 250 feet in a Hornet, well, that's going to feel fast. You know, it's relative,
So, hey,
40,000 feet, Mach 2.
so Adam, I know the question is for Mover, but like Mover, just like when you do low levels in a fighter, right? You start
Yeah.
at 500 feet to get kind of used to it. And then it's a weird thing. Your brain gets used to the speed. And all of a sudden, 500 feet at 500 knots, you're like, oh, I can do this all day.
Yeah.
Step it down, to 200 feet. And at first it feels pretty quick, but then it starts to, your body, almost real time will adjust to the sensation of speed, which can be dangerous.
For the record, when I did my first low level in the Hornet, it was at 200 feet. Nobody was like, I was an Air Force guy and I was a 500 foot guy. We didn't ever go lower than 500 feet. I remember my flight lead. He's
hard.
like, okay, dude, we're going to do 200 feet. I'm like, how much? He's like, yep, just stay on my wing, stay in wedge back there. And I'm like, how many feet? He's like 200 feet.
So we used to tell guys, if I was the lead, I would just tell my women, don't go lower than me. And off to the races.
I tell you. Anyway, all right, moving on. We have a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
Mm.
And this is my excuse to use some footage later when we cut these videos. And that's the whole point of this is we were able to cut these in videos if you haven't noticed, those of you that don't watch this live or are going to watch this later. So, Airshow experiences. I know, Gonky, you were a demo pilot for a little while. I never got that opportunity. I would have. That would have been awesome. But I wanted to talk about some of our favorite airshow experiences. And Gonky, even though it's my topic, I'll ask you the question first. What is your...
Thank you, sir.
Because you're on a roll, dude. I can't stop you today. You've talked so much. You've talked more in this episode than you have the whole season.
My
So I wanna
internet
keep
is
this
allowing
going.
me. Your internet is objecting though.
It's my camera. I'm carrying us both right now. Gonky, what is your favorite time? I mean, what did you think about doing air shows, man? What's your take on that?
Well, we always had a saying, an air show is a great place to shine your rear end. So, I mean, man, to answer your question, the air show experience that is by far my favorite. I did the St. Louis Air Show once. Like you said, I was a demo pilot. I was actually on the B team, but we had a crash that year that killed a couple guys. So that really neutered the whole program. So the demo year was cut short. But my favorite show that I did was St. Louis, and it was over a couple days. And what made it so cool was my parents were able to come out. And so my parents got to watch me, fly with the Corsair, do some light aerobatics, go near supersonic past the arches at low altitude. And then, of course, I got to park the jet, get out, people all around. And it was really cool just to be able to do that for my mom and dad, because I was stationed out in California and, they're in Ohio, and they never, I go home twice a year. So they never really knew, I have this whole life and out west as a fighter pilot. And my parents never really knew that. And they got to see a little bit of what I do via an air show in St. Louis. And that was awesome. And the people there, they treated me awesome. I got to park the jet at Boeing. I mean, it was an awesome experience. And the jet broke and I got stuck there for 2 weeks, but that's a whole nother story. So, but it was the St. Louis Air Show, and it was because my parents could come out and see it. How about you?
That is my story as well. So, I mean, I never got to do demo flying, but I came back from a deployment and I found out about the Acadian Air Show, New Iberia. And it's about, Doug, about an hour and a half away from where we live.
I made it down there in 45 minutes because you called me and said, come down.
Well, okay. So I got to bring my first time down there. I did the air show 3 or 4 times. And first time I went down there, they sent me with a crew chief, and I was the snacko, and they sent me with all this merch, right? Because they're like, hey, make some money for the Squadron Snacko Fund, which maybe I should plead the fifth. Allegedly, this happened. So you go down there, and it's my first air show, and my dad shows up in the motorhome. And if you don't know, I've got a special needs brother. He's got cerebral palsy, so they were traveling in the motorhome. My stepmom was there, brought the wiener dogs, brought the golf cart and stuff. And this was the first time really my dad got to see me as a fighter pilot. I'd done a cross country in a T-38, but there's nothing better than coming to your home in a jet that is meant for combat, because this is just the pride for them. So I got to land at New Iberia. You do a couple patterns and stuff, which I thought was cool. That's the first time I'd ever seen a carrier brake, because I think it might have even been Stoner that as he's leaving, he's doing like carrier brake to depart, and I'm like, wow, that's legal. That's the coolest thing ever. And it was just an experience, because now you're there, you're standing in front of the aircraft, you're starting to talk to people, and they're asking you questions. Some of them are great questions that you have no idea. And some of them are like stupid questions, like, is that your bombs on there? Is that a nuclear weapon you're there with? And some of it's just like, this is, tell me about the deployment. Tell me about what you're going on. Because remember, this is 09, 2010. We're still in the middle of OIF, OEF. And to me, it was one of the most rewarding things I'd done, just because of the family aspect. And one of the funny stories, which I'll play in the video that accompanies this, is, I was like probably the third one or the last one I did. One of them got rained out. So there was no air show. We was just to fly in, and then we left. And the last one, for those of you that are familiar with the F-16, you'll know my pain. But for those of you that aren't, it's got a jet fuel starter, JFS, and it's got 2 bottles, right? So it stores this energy to start it. And start 1, start 2 pops the accumulator there, and it fires the JFS, which then fires the engine, because that's how it starts. It doesn't have a start card or anything like that. If the pressure is low, if it's been sitting a while, sometimes you'll go JFS start 2, and you'll get and a big puff of smoke, and nothing will happen. Well, luckily the crew chief, I didn't have a crew chief for this one, but the Viper demo team was there. And so really great crew chief's like, yeah, I got you, man. Goes over to his stuff, grabs the handle, and goes, here you go. And it's springtime, it's hot. So I'm under the jet pumping up to get the accumulator up to get enough pressure so that I can start the engine, because it's like, I forgot, somebody in the chat will probably know. That's probably an F-16 crew chief, but I think it's like a couple hundred like cranks to get it back to the right pressure once you pop that bottle. And it takes a while when you're in full flight gear. But the whole time my dad's filming this thing, he's just sitting there with the 8mm camcorder filming this entire evolution of me getting in, strapping in. Yeah, I'm cool. Boo, get out, pump the bottle up, get back in. Okay, I'm cool again. Taxi out, and then off to back to Homestead. And to me, that was just, you look back at your career, you look back at some of the coolest things you did, and being able to, I saw Doug, you were there for that. And I think being able to show your friends and family what you've accomplished was probably one of the most meaningful things that I've been able to do. I did cross countries, which I think next week we'll talk about cross countries, because I think there's a lot to talk about separately. But I did cross countries in the Hornet, never got to do an air show. But I think those 2 things were some of the most fulfilling, and also some of the things you learned, because you're on your own with an airplane. Uncle Sam, at the time I was 26, 27 years old with my own F-16, and well, you've also got all the stuff associated with it to take care of. So
Dad was probably like, man, you got to be in good shape to start an F-16.
He's probably like, boy, I told you not to work on the things yourself. He was.
Yeah, don't give Mover a wrench.
Yeah, I'm not, as T-Bear will attest, I'm not the person to be working on anything.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a good story.
Producer Doug, we got any more?
Yeah, we're going to
from the chat
run through a couple, at least this one quick, because it's in progress.
Is my razor?
This, you know what? This probably lags from last time. Your internet is still catching up. You're still catching up from last time that he hasn't realized that you're better now.
But it is a new comment.
It is a razor. Yeah. Is my internet bad?
Nah, it's good.
Yeah.
Technoplysol, is it scary to fly you guys pronounce that seed
Yeah, seed.
against live SAM sites? Does anybody know?
Seed
I
indeed.
don't know. I'm
does
gonna
anybody
say
know what?
yes. It would be scary. I've never
I
done it.
it depends on what you're in. You know,
That's true.
If you're in F-35 or a CJ or somebody
Growler.
that somebody that's used to doing this, you're probably like, and you die, and then you die, and then it's your turn to die. If you're in a Block 30 F-16 or a MiG-29 with just a harm strapped to the wing, and you're just like, good luck, boys. It's a little bit
Iron
scarier.
Hand.
Yeah. So, all right. I feel like this is a math question. Go ahead, Doug.
30,000 feet at Mach 1-ish in the F-16. Roughly, what is your IAS? Always wondered. You
3
guys
something probably.
look it up on the chart.
Yeah, you can Google this. I appreciate the for $10 I can Google it for you.
I feel
Let's
like I
see.
dropped the ball. I should have had that one ready.
You should, if what do you say, 30,000 feet?
That always did amaze me, like how low your indicated airspeed would get as like
1.0.
at high altitude
Uh,
compared to your.
At 30,000 feet, it is 390 knots calibrated airspeed at Mach 1. So
Wow.
here we go. There we go. The more you know.
And
All right,
I
back
feel
to
like, let's just throw this one in before we jump.
Adam.
Are you
Awesome.
gonna read it, or am I gonna read it?
I'll read it. My favorite airshow
Yeah.
moment was seeing my first ever jet fighter. It was 1991, and I was 6. Wow, I was a lot older than that in 1991. My first ever fighter in the air was an F-117. Seeing it and hearing it in person truly changed my life. I'm sure that's true for a lot of folks.
Oh man, in '91, the F-117 was like, I mean, it's like looking at a
Brand new.
UFO.
Yeah, it's brand
Yeah,
new.
that's awesome, Adam. Thanks, man.
All right. So a new feature for the channel. We have got voice messages, and
Look at us
Spotify,
go.
now that we're on Spotify, we can get the voice messages. The hard part's going to be relaying these voice messages. So if I did it right, here we go. We're going to try this. If I did it right, the first voice message is from, I think he said Rich is my hero. I didn't want to use his real name. Are you ready, Gonky?
Send it.
Send it.
Hello, Mover and Gonky. This is Rich is my hero here. What situations have you both been in where the pucker factor was high? This might not be flying, it might be something else that you've done, but obviously flying stuff would be way cooler. Thanks both. Love the content. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, man. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Isn't that cool? I mean,
Yeah,
technology,
it's pretty wild.
If we had live callers, one day, mark my words, Gonky, one day we'll figure that out too.
Technology is amazing. Like clearly, he's not from the South. So,
No,
I mean, it's
that was
amazing.
not a Southern accent.
No, it's
No.
amazing that somebody from another country can ask those questions. No.
Or
Go
cares
ahead,
enough
Mover.
about us. Me? Okay. What do we want? Because we're going to do both. What do you want to do? You want to do air or ground?
I've got stories for days.
All right. So here's one I'll talk about. And this is a good, I'm not going to say segue, but it ties into what we were talking about before of what happens when you feel overwhelmed. Because sometimes things will just cascade on you and you'll be like, what's going on? I was at Eglin and I talked about how Eglin's not necessarily friendly to T-38s. I was at Eglin. I was fighting a Raptor. It was one of the ACM rides where, we're dogfighting the instructor. The students got to come find us, pick out the right guy, kill me. We were relatively close to the field and the forecast for the weather was decent. It wasn't like a bad day. The weather wasn't forecast to make us IFR. So we were using VFR bingo fuel. So that means the fuel that we calculated to go back once we were done with the mission was based off of, I'm going to go to the VFR entry point, come up initial, pitch out, land, and what was it, 800 pounds in the T-38? So around 800 pounds. And so on this day, however, everything's going great. We both bingo out. We're both done with the sets. We're just a little bit above bingo, not much. And I check out, and I'm starting to head north to go back to Eglin. And the airspace controller's like, whoa, where are you going? And I'm like, well, I'm checking out. He's like, nobody told you to leave the airspace. I'm like, well, dude, we are always just start flowing north. I'm limited on fuel. He's like, well, there's weather moving in, and they're starting to sequence people for the ILS, which is the instrument landing approach. And I'm like, do what now? You know, because fuel in a fighter, wouldn't you agree, Gonky? That's probably like, you know, being on fire, running out of fuel. These are like our biggest fears in a jet.
Yeah. And if a fighter's coming back to the base, he's like 5 minutes
We're
from
already
emergency fuel.
Yeah. We plan it because we want to use every ounce of fuel.
Yep.
And if we get back and we've got a little extra, maybe we'll beat up the pattern. But usually we want to use our gas tactically. And especially when you're supporting Raptor students, because it is, you know, tens of thousands of dollars an hour for their training. You're trying to be the best adversary pilot you can for their training and, you know, for their learning experience. So anyway, I'm the first one down the train from our little group. And they're like, hey, they're going IFR. And I'm like, well, what do you mean IFR? I could see the field, right? And as we get closer, I can now see this wall of like puffy clouds. It's not socked in, but there's these puffy clouds that are just starting to pop up over the VFR points. And I'm like, well, I can see the runway. What are we doing? They're like, no, we're going to go ILS. So I said, well, that sounds bad. So they hand me off to Eglin Approach, and Eglin Approach is, you know, whatever my call sign, race 1, expect the ILS runway 19. So not only are we instrument procedures, but we're instrument procedures landing to the south. And one thing we've learned, having been there for 2 years at this point, was that they will take you all the way out to 20 miles, turn you back around, and do it. So I am south of the field over the ocean. They're going to take me all the way north to Crestview and then turn me back around to fly the ILS. And as I'm doing this, I'm down at 2,000 feet, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to run out of gas. Like, your mind starts racing. You know, you're starting to think, oh, if I run out of, I'm like, this is close. Like, I'm at 1,000 pounds, 1,100 pounds. Like the seat cushion is now like sucked up as much as it possibly can be at this point. So I'm telling them, and I'm like, look, I'm min fuel, because minimum fuel is a declaration that, hey, I'm going to be landing with less than normal recovery, 600 pounds if we do this. And they're like, Roger. And I'm like, hey, I'm minimum fuel. And this is one thing I learned. When you say that, it means nothing to them. They're like, let us know when you're emergency fuel. And I'm like, okay, which is actually declaring an emergency. So as we keep trucking north, I'm looking at the fuel, and I'm now just under 1,000 pounds over the field. And I'm like, if I go 20 miles to the north, this thing's going to flame out. There's no way. And I'm over the field. I can see the runway. I can see, you know, downwind and stuff. It's just puffy clouds that just happen to be blocking the tower's view of stuff. So I declare emergency fuel. I said, you know, race 1, emergency fuel, request direct downwind. And they're like, Roger that, you know, go direct downwind, copy emergency fuel. So I went right to downwind, turned and landed, and then the fire trucks all met me, and they're like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, I'm nothing. I just emergency fuel. I've got, 700 pounds of gas now. I'm fine. Like, things are good now. If I hadn't done this, things would have been bad then. It was like a preemptive thing. And that was one of multiple times. In fact, the only 2 times I declared emergency fuel were at Eglin, where weather rolled in that wasn't expected. And, they just shut down the pattern and said, you're going to have to fly the ILS. And I'm like, I can't. This jet doesn't have the fuel, especially low altitude with gear hanging and stuff like that. It just doesn't have the fuel to do it. And there are other stories, but I don't know. That's the one that came to mind when I heard this question. Gonky, what do you have?
Yeah. So, when you first told me about the question, a lot of sea stories went through my mind. But, flying wise, since that's what he'd like to hear, probably there's one time in my illustrious flanker that actually grabbed the ejection handle. And basically, we were out in Key West doing a good deal 2v1. I was the one, so I was the bandit. And I was fighting my training O, my buddy Porkins. And I jumped him from the 6 o'clock position. And like good blue air, right before I was getting ready to pull the trigger and shoot my training O, I decided to shoot him first since he had a Top Gun patch. But anyways, right before I was getting ready to pull the trigger, man, he called a brake turn, and he broke left and went almost pure nose low. My buddy Porkins broke right and then went up in the vertical. So I pulled really hard initially down low, shot Link, our training O, and I reversed to go after Porkins, who was going uphill. What ended up happening was, as he's coming over the top, and I'm coming up the bottom, we both square it off pretty hard, right? Because now we're worried about this thing we'd call sensor nose, right? About getting shot. Long story short, those hard pulls to get the airplanes around the corner depleted our energy. And so what happened was Morgan's coming downhill with almost no energy. I'm coming uphill with limited energy. And I remember looking up at it and thinking, constant bearing, decreasing range.
Yeah.
And if he's not moving across your windscreen, he's moving through it. And it was pretty obvious to me, like, I think we're going to hit. So I was already in full blower and I was pulling back on the stick, and I pulled back on the stick even more. I mean, all the way to the stop. And the airplane, being the good Hornet it does, it rotated about its axis, but it kept going in its same direction. And I thought that doesn't work. So I shoved the stick all the way forward, and it rotated again about its axis, but kept going in its trajectory because we were ballistic, basically. You're supposed to call ballistic, but when I was, certain of my own demise, I just didn't have the brain bias to do it. And I could see Porkins doing the same thing. And when it became apparent to me that we are indeed ballistic, there's nothing we can do to change our trajectory, I reached down, I grabbed the handle, and I thought, there's two things that went through my mind. I'm scared of heights. I don't like sharks. So around Key West, we're at 20,000 feet, and there's lots of water, Florida water beneath me. So I really didn't want to eject. And I don't know what it was. I took another look out, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe we'll miss. And I just held on. I had one hand on the stick pulling back, one hand on the ejection handle, and we passed. And I just remember silence. And then I don't know if you remember, I can't replicate it with my voice, but the rat out going off.
Oh, yeah.
So in the Navy, going through 5,000 feet, you set the rat out 5,000 feet is as high as it goes. So he passed beneath me, and I mean, I was staring at Porkins. I mean, our eyes, like our eyeballs, were huge, and he passed underneath me. I thought maybe the tail would hit, but I mean, we literally just barely missed one another. The rat out went off, and you're supposed, there's this whole comm drill. Well, knock it off, this, that, and I didn't say a word. I just flew home. It's like, Link's like, you guys okay? I'm like, yeah, Link, I'm just going home. And, I don't drink much, but if you remember their mover at the Fly Navy, there's that little shop across the parking lot. We went over there and bought a bottle of Gentleman Jack. And Porkins and I had a bottle of Gentleman Jack. I still, every time I talk to him, I'm like, remember that time you almost killed me? And he claims it was my fault, but I thought I was pretty offensive until I wasn't. So, but that's the only time I ever grabbed the handle thinking I'm going to have to get out of this airplane. So like Mover said, there's a lot of other times I've had some serious pucker factors, but that stands out in my mind.
Yeah. So Doc Holiday Garage says, wouldn't you just say bingo is higher than you normally would declare, so not to run into issues like that? Well, you see, the problem with that is, so bingo was based on the airspace, where it is, normal processing times. It did not take into account a VFR day turning into an IFR day at the time. That wasn't a consideration. You remember this, Gonky? You remember this whole discussion we were having? I mean, this became a big thing, right? Because we weren't used to them and they weren't used to us. So we did eventually start padding the numbers because of this. But to go from forecast VFR to not even IFR, but they're calling it IFR, wasn't something we were ready for.
Well, the other problem was some of the ranges that we had to get to the T-38 were so far, like you couldn't really pad your numbers too much because
you wouldn't do anything.
You get out there and do like one set, and if you stuck to your padded numbers, you're technically out of gas, right? So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It was a difficult problem to work through. And at the end of the day, I mean, Mover, he just exercised his own judgment as a professional pilot. And that's what you're supposed to do at the end of the day. I mean, because, you're tasked with a mission providing quality red air for students because it's expensive. And then at the same time, you don't want to crash a jet. Right. So, they say, the rules are black and white, but, in the real world, there's some gray area.
Well, and to me, that feeling of I'm going to run out of gas, because that's one of those things that's completely within your control. You know, if you run out of gas, there's an error chain back there unless you have a leak, you know, and you're just like, you know, you just don't want to be that person that runs out of fuel, to the point where, you know, we debriefed it. You know, I came back and I talked to the director of operations and the squadron commander. I'm like, this is why, you know, based on my training and experience, I, you know, declared an emergency. I said, look, if I don't land now, bad things are going to happen. And it, you know, that Raptor behind me, by the way, he declared emergency fuel too, because he went through the exact same thing. So, you know, that's one incident of many. You know, I've had the near mid airs and all that stuff, but I don't know. That's just one that came to mind just based on what we were talking about before. But Gonky, what is your ground story? I'm going to let you lead off with the ground story. What is something?
You mean not flying?
Not flying. Yeah. It doesn't have to be. Yeah. It's non-aviation.
Well, I thought about that as well. And you know, as far as sometimes you can have pucker factor and still get hurt. You know, my aviation story, I had pucker factor and I didn't get hurt. But for the ground, so you know, movers in the cars, I was in the cars for a while. Cat shots kind of ruined that for me. But so I've always been a big motorcycle guy. I ride and race dirt bikes as an amateur. But when I was real young, my 12. My dad actually worked for Aramco Oil Company, so I grew up overseas in Saudi Arabia. And it was Ramadan, and I was out riding my dirt bike. We had a little track out there in the evening, and during Ramadan, when the sun sets, you know, if you're a practicing Muslim, you know, you fast throughout the day, and then you have a feast at night. Well, this family was driving, for whatever reason, in their Buick Park Avenue or whatever, out in the desert to have their evening feast, and they just so happened to be, they just drove on our track, and there was a decent sized jump here on our track, and I remember as 12 years old, I hit the jump I hit this thing 100 times, and I look down and I'm like, dude, there's a car driving to where I'm going to land, and I landed right on the hood, front tire went through the windshield, caved in the roof, and I did a front flip, and there was a gap in my memory for a while. I ended up in the hospital. I spent about 3 days in the hospital, broken arm, mild concussion, we'll say. But yeah, it banged me up pretty good.
For legal reasons, this is a joke.
Yeah, exactly. A long time ago. But, you know, I just remember even being 12 years old, that's probably the first time. Up until that point, I was pretty wild. You know, on a motorcycle, that was probably the most dangerous thing that I was doing at the time. I was pretty crazy. You know, when you're young, some kids learn by physical pain. Some you can just tell them, don't touch the hot stove. I have to touch the stove. So that's my first real time getting scared and getting hurt. And I remember coming out of that because it took me a while to recover. It took me, you know, a couple months because I had broken bones, but I wasn't the same for a long time after that. The mental aspect of that got to me. It took me a long time to acknowledge my own mortality, you know, because when you're a kid, you think you're like Superman, invincible. So that really scared me. And I still think about that today. Thankfully, in the States, I ride on tracks where there's no cars, but and it totaled that car, by the way. I didn't think it'd do that. I saw it at it totaled it. I went and looked at it after the fact. I did not think I probably weighed 110 pounds at the time, and my motorcycle is RM125. It probably weighed 200 pounds. I mean, it totaled that car. I was amazed at the damage it did to it. So, and my bike was fine. Banged me up, but yeah, that's probably my my pucker factor non-flying story.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's why the way I am now, man.
Yeah. Tell the story 3 or 4 times in the same way. Yeah. Wow.
How about you?
All right. Dude, I don't know. You know, I kept trying to think of a different story that wasn't this, but the same story kept coming to mind. So last year, I just finished a road certification. I was solo with the sheriff's office. As some of you know, I'm a volunteer sheriff's deputy, road certified. I've got my own Tahoe. I've got, you know, all the stuff. I'm fully qualified. Actually, I wasn't. I just got my rifle. So I'd finished the rifle course and everything. And I was out on patrol, and a lot of cops know this. When you hear the tone of beedoo, beedoo, like they will tone out something that is a no kidding, something's in progress. Something is happening that, you know, everybody's probably going to end up having to respond. And I was just driving down, you know, the road. We'd just been hanging out, was driving down, and they toned it out. And it was they call it a suicide attempt, is what they called it out at. So, you know, start turning around to go to it. And while they're on there, they said the woman had called in and said that she had just killed her daughter and she was going to kill herself. And the dispatcher reported she heard the shots on the phone, and then the line was still open. So we ran code, you know, me by myself in the Tahoe, but we intersect, and we're this line of guys just going to this call. And we get there, and you no idea what, you know, you don't know if she's still shooting, you know, if she shot herself. That's all we know at this point. And we all, you know, get there, stage up. I grab my rifle, you know, first time to ever, you know, use this in a tactical situation. And we get there, and the dog's dead because she killed her dog, and her daughter's dead, and then she's dead too. But that whole thing leading up to it, you know, you're just like, I don't know what I'm about to get myself into. You know, I don't know what this is about to be. And, you know, that to me, that was, I tried to think of something cooler or something funnier, but that's the one that sticks out the most because, you know, I'm a dog guy, right? You know, that's the first thing, you know, I'm posted up at the doorway next to this German Shepherd, beautiful, you know, 3 or 4 year old German Shepherd. And it's there. And, you know, you're just like, you see this stuff on TV, you know, in fact, it did make the national news right after, but you see this stuff on TV, but then you're like, these are real people doing real bad things to, you know, people that they love. And it ended up, the reason like was stupid, you know, it was like they owed money, whatever, it's like, you know, that's why to me, mental health is such a big deal when we talk about this, not just for the aviation side, but also for what I've seen, you know, because I just did a mental health first aid class in law enforcement, and is the amount of attempted suicides I've been to, the amount of times I've been to calls where people are wanting or thinking about, or, you know, suicidal ideations, they're getting in that situation. You know, when having seen the aftermath of that, you go, look, we can fix this. You know, that's not the end of the world, or it doesn't need to be the end of the world, because, you know, your temporary problem does not need a permanent solution. We can work through this. There's no need to take others with you. There's no need to, you know, put yourself in this situation, because help is available. I think, you know, now nationally 988 is available for, you know, if you got suicide thoughts. But dude, sorry, I didn't mean to put a damper on that, but it's the one that I just kept coming to mind every time I think about this topic.
Wow.
So anyway, Doug, you got anything? Yeah, that's actually
too soon.
The next one.
Tomcats.
Yeah, that was from Saxon. Yeah, he just kept saying Tomcats. Yeah.
Tomcats.
Oh God, it's on a loop now. I can't stop. Oh.
Tomcats. Tomcats.
Oh boy, how do I make it stop? Douglas.
That's not my department.
Yeah. All right, Douglas, what do we have from the chat?
Let's see. Going back a ways now. Have any of you guys seen the Saab Viggen in action? Also looking forward to seeing the Gripen E in more joint operations when we're officially in NATO.
No, but I did do an interview with a pilot that flew the Gripen. Well, he still flies the Gripen. He flew the Viggen. Did he fly the Draken too? Wouldn't he? Like, he flew all the Saabs.
Can't remember.
Yeah, I want to say he flew them all. That surprised me, because Draken's going back a ways.
Yeah, so he flew all of them, and really cool guy. The Gripen's an awesome aircraft. I hope we get to see it more, but yeah, for sure. But never got to see one in person because I don't know. Why would I?
Thanks, Tobias. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And we've got Hiram Bifidum wants to know if it's possible to fake FLIR footage these days.
Anything can be faked. Yeah, anything can be faked. Anything could be DCS. You know, I mean, anything can be faked. Is that it?
That brings us up to date on Super Chats.
Awesome. So, next topic. for our this week's mental health minute. Wow, we just had a mental health minute there, but I wanted to talk about something that I think is applicable in everybody's life. It's complacency, right? You always hear complacency kills, and it's something that we talk about in the F-16 manual, if you will, because that's the one manual I have read. I took it out because it's quoted as complacency is a sense of well-being, often while unaware of potential danger. And usually complacency hits when you're tired or when you've been doing a routine task over and over and over, i.e. you've gotten experience, right? Where they say when you're most dangerous, when you've reached that 100 to 200 hours in the aircraft and you think you know what you're doing, and you start to take routine tasks for granted. And this doesn't just apply to aviation, but racing cars, law enforcement, first responders, any of that stuff. It always applies. So, Gonky, what is your take? Like, how did you dealt with students a lot? How would you get them aware of the dangers of complacency and how not to be complacent?
Honestly, in my experience as an instructor, I found that the new students almost never suffered from complacency because everything was new, relatively speaking. A lot of things were new and they were under pressure, and they would usually perform. Where I saw complacency more often was like you'd have a senior guy coming back through just to get a rehack because he's got thousands of hours of doing it, his way. And that experience would cause them to be complacent in some areas. So, generally speaking, like you catch it, right? But no, the young guys, I can't think of one time where any of the students that I taught were complacent on anything. Usually, like I said, it was the more senior guys coming through. I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, complacency, I think, is that, the human body is always trying to operate, like the brain's always trying to put things in automatic mode. And I just think if you have a lot of experience, like you said, if you've done a task over and over repetitive, like it's you can drive, eat an ice cream cone and talk on the phone at the same time because your body has basically automated a lot of tasks, right? But if you're a new driver, you can't, right? You're totally focused on keeping it between the lines. Same thing. So.
Yeah. And you see this in aviation mishaps. I've done a lot of AIB, reports where complacency, not just within the mishap pilot, but sometimes complacency with their leadership, right? Where they're making decisions and going, well, we've always flown in this kind of weather. It should be fine. Or I think another big one is the airlines, right? Because what is a profession that has a lot of automated routine tasks where you do them over and over and over again, and you're lulled into this sense. We have been very fortunate in the United States, especially, when's the last fatality? Well, the Southwest mishap where, that was just a catastrophic event. But even before that, the Miracle of the Hudson, not a fatality. Things went well, but we've had a very long period of safety, which is good, but also can lull people into the sense of, well, this is just routine, when aviation is anything but routine. Aviation is inherently dangerous just by the fact that we're doing something that humans were never meant to do. We mitigate those risks, but you can never mitigate everything.
Yeah, yes. It's a dynamic environment. And it's always changing, right? So.
Yeah, and it just takes, like you talked about, especially with FMCs, the computer, it just takes fat fingering one number and you don't realize it.
Yep.
It just takes that one little misstep, and all of a sudden you're taking off with takeoff and landing data for a runway that's 4,000 feet shorter than what you're actually on, or you're on the wrong runway, or you did something. So how do we battle this? Well, one of the things is you have to recognize it, which is very tough to do. I think, it's like hypoxia, right? The most difficult one to recognize, is where you're not completely out to lunch. You're not completely debilitated because you actually are still trying to function. And
Yep.
this is especially because you've done it. You've got this sense of, hey, everything's going great. Well, checklist discipline, that's one way to mitigate it. Communication, SOP, communication, talking, whether people misunderstand crew and cockpit resource management. They think that that's only for heavies. Fighters probably do it more. Every sortie is, that's why, especially in the Air Force, 1 and 3 are your flight lead and your element lead, and you say, hey, back me up. However, anybody in the formation can sing up if there's something dumb, dangerous, or different at any time. And that communication keeps us honest. Remember I said in the previous...
There's no rank in the air, right?
No rank in the air, no rank in the debrief, at least not in the Air Force. It goes back to the planning phase. It starts with a good brief mission plan, but then in the air, everybody's got a voice because we're a team operating towards one goal. Yep. And it's not, I think that's what sets us apart from some other countries where, it's about honor and it's about, well, I don't want to be shamed and all this stuff. Our goal is to learn, get better, and accomplish the mission. So complacency is one of those things that will prevent us from accomplishing that mission, whether it's flying a fighter or in law enforcement. That's a big killer in law enforcement is complacency. You don't watch their hands. You're not positioning yourself. There was a video I watched. I like to watch the police, police activity and stuff like that. Well, there was a video where a guy rolls up on a suspected U-Haul vehicle and just gets out, and he thinks it's stolen, suspected stolen U-Haul vehicle, and he starts talking to the guy. He's like, hey, come on over to my unit. Let's talk. This guy's suspected of stealing this U-Haul, right? The cop's by himself, and he starts talking to the guy, and then he's like, okay, hey, bring me another unit. So he's talking into his mic. Well, what happens while he's talking to his mic? The guy goes for his gun, and that becomes a struggle that ends up in the McDonald's parking lot next door, and many shots shot through the window, and by the grace of God, nothing bad happened to any bystanders or the cop or anything like that. But it's complacency that puts us in these situations where we forget our training or go, well, it's not going to happen to me. And we're lulled into the sense of everything is fine. You have to be on edge a little bit, no matter what you do in these situations, even flying an airliner, because if you're not, you may miss something.
Yeah. It's like, never had a real V1 cut, but we might have one today.
Exactly.
So you get ready for it. I always think about that. I look down at the end of the runway. I'm like, look long, man. Keep it going straight. I mean, because if you're just caught sitting on your hands, stuff like that will kill you.
And for those at home, a V1 cut is a rejected takeoff, right? Or
high speed.
Or something happens at a higher speed where you have to decide whether I'm going to take this aircraft flying or I'm going to reject the takeoff. And whether that's in a fighter, complacency kills in G. I've been pulling 9 Gs all week. I'm good. I don't need to worry about the G strain. I don't need to go to the GX and pay attention to it. I'm just going to pay lip service to it. Right. And then the first thing you do, the 9G bat turn, your lights out. It's that kind of complacency, whether it's safety related or tactically, where you get complacent about where the friendly troops are. You get, oh well, they're always here. I'm used to the, it's that sense of everything's fine. This time it'll be fine too. Versus I need to confirm. I need to stick to the procedures and not let myself go down that route. It's hard. That's probably one of the toughest things to do, especially as you get more experience.
Yep, I agree.
Douglas, as our psychological expert, you've got anything to add for this one?
Well, I was thinking about that while you were talking, and you kept stealing everything I was going to say. So nice job. that was very well done. Well, I mean that as a compliment. I got a PhD in this stuff. You emphasize the group nature of it and the cultural aspect. If you're in a culture, and I use the word culture to mean any group that you're existing in tactically, socially, whatever. If you're in a group that everybody thinks it's cool to not follow procedure and not follow SOP, and we're tough guys, we don't need to do it the right way, you're in danger. The group attitude and the group approach to it is really critical, and that's something you emphasized a couple of times. That's a really familiar aspect to anybody who's studied it from that angle.
Normalization of deviance.
Normalization of deviance. That is the phrase, and you see it so many places.
Yeah. Oh.
I was doing some research on it in engineering recently, of all places.
Wow.
Well, I
Yep.
mean,
It can happen
we just
anywhere.
talked about an Ocean Gate submarine. I mean, that's a normalization of deviance. That's
Very
a
good
hey,
example.
yeah. I mean, all right. Well, let's see. Moving on to any reattacks, Gonky. Sorry, I cut you off on the last any reattack. So this time I'm gonna let you say it. I apologize. Any reattacks on this one? I got
No,
too
sir.
excited. Okay. Douglas, it is time. Did we decide you're reading this or am I reading this?
It's pretty long. I could
That's
try
what
to
she said.
summarize it, but it's
There you go.
so to speak. It's such a good story. You want to?
I got this.
Got it?
All
All right. So I don't know.
I got it because it's from Mayo. I liked it. Hi mover. You ask for stories in this context. Let me give you this one. It inspired a few before. Hope it will inspire more going through your channel. During primary school, I wasn't the quickest learner. All I did was dreaming about becoming a fighter attack pilot. Movies like Final Countdown, Star Wars, Flight of the Intruder, and of course, Top Gun inspired me. By the end of primary, I was told you won't be a pilot, kid, by my teacher. Heard that one before. I remember thinking, watch and learn, and begging my parents to send me to a little high grade secondary school. Even that wouldn't bring me to a pilot slot, but at least start me off a bit closer. Fast forward 4 years, 16 years, worked hard at school and had to choose what school I wanted to do next. I was kind of talked about doing an extra 2 years to get a high grade because it may be too tough, especially becoming a pilot. So I went to a different school to become an IT expert. Dude, that made me realize I was less of a nerd than I thought. Plan to become an NCO, that's non-commissioned officer, senior enlisted, if you will, to get a degree and apply to be a fighter pilot just before the age limit. Fast forward 4 more years, standing at the gate of, what did we say, Gills region, Doug?
It's Gilja Rian. I actually
Okay.
Googled it.
Every time we come up to that, I want you to say it. To meet a recruiter.
Gilja
It's nice and
Rian.
well, now it's lagged. Ellen heard me out and replied with, why don't you just get your math degree on top of what you have? That will qualify you. Am I still yelling? Oh, that will qualify you to take the test. It would take 6 or 9 months at the most. Nice. My world changed to these few words. Raced back to school, felt ready for my math exam within 5 months. My goal was simple. All we had was the Cougar, Chinook, Apache, and Viper. I stepped into Douglas Sosterberg.
I didn't look up Schusterberg.
All right, for the Viper. No discussion, but I took the silliest gamble. Tests are spread out over 10 months. Aptitude tests. What country is this? Psyche evals, medical simulator tests, and practical flight test. I quit my IT job, started daily PT, learned about aviation, took some flying lessons, taught myself how to fly and Cessna's properly through Microsoft Flight Simulator, played a lot of Falcon 4.0, reading anything I could get on the Viper, and party a lot. Chances an applicant makes it through it was about 0.1% in my head. I was that 0.1%. Failed a simple hearing test on day 1. Did you fall asleep like Gonky? Because I misunderstood. That's we got to tell that story after this. Luckily, you can retry once you get. This is definitely a different country. 9 more months. Fast forward. Out of 3,000 applicants, I was one of 27 reporting to the academy in the city of Breda. Breda had I wasn't as fit as I thought mentally. I wasn't mentally prepared. Again, these words, you won't be a pilot, but an old Viper standing on a patch of grass kept reminding me why I was there. Fast forward 1 year, 9 months again. 1 flight to go into our UPT with a PC-7, definitely not the U.S., before we send out to Injept, which is the U.S., or the rotary variant thereof. Like everyone, I had my errors as a flight student. My last check flight was delayed a few days, but assignment was coming anyway, so to speak. I received my assignment slot, and because of the competency IPs had me, it was one of 3 Viper slots. Nice. Fast forward 10 days, got reassigned to some old FAPE guy. I never saw at the squadron for my check ride. If anyone is the prime example of a douche, it's him. 30 minutes later, late for the brief, telling me I must have sat there ready while the ops officer told me to stand down and wait for a call. This sounds like a very tragic story, then giving me a bad grade. I went to court with this, supporting my commander and IP, but short story is they had to get rid of people in the Viper training because they were sold to Chile, and more would be sold later. Fast forward 2 years, got the commercial pilot license, aerobatic rating, 2,000 hours more. I ran into 2 former Air Force pilots that ran a company similar to Draken and Top Aces. They ferried them to their home base in dense fog, over 100 miles in a Piper Archer. Standing in the hangar right between them was an L-39 electronic warfare Learjet. Handed him my card, not thinking I have a remote chance. 3 months later, he was hired and he was supporting a large exercise. 2023, he's back as an Air Force captain, starting work as the new big simulator center, maybe major by the time this is told, because flight sims is what helped me in the first place. Now we'll try to get the pilots mission ready. Lessons learned, make them tell you no, never give up on your dreams.
Wow.
Whew, that's a lot of reading.
Wow.
You know, the point of the make them tell you no segment is just this, right? I told this story when I first started the channel. It's not like I'm an astronaut. I'm this, super smart dude that's, what the stereotypical fighter pilot is. What separates us from people who didn't get it is, one, work ethic. Work ethic is always going to be a big thing. But two, perseverance, because unless you're that astronaut, you're probably going to get told no. And a lot of people don't even get to the no. They get to the self-elimination. They go, well, Joe Blow told me you have to have X-ray vision to be a fighter pilot. So therefore, I know I don't have X-ray vision. I'm just going to go play video games instead. And I'm never even going to try.
Yep.
You have to apply yourself, but you also have to take the chances. It doesn't cost you anything usually. You have to make them tell you no. Don't tell yourself no. Don't self-eliminate. Don't look up things and be like, this is why I can't do it. Figure out why you can. Figure out why it's possible. Don't try to figure out why it's not. What do you think, Gonky?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I sit here before you as just a regular guy, and I would argue that, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. You got to persevere, man. Don't stop. Just keep applying. I mean, I had to overcome my issues just like everybody else, and I would even argue, man, astronauts. For sure, like those guys are super motivated. For sure, they got told no at some point along the way.
Yeah. Go watch The Right Stuff. It was on HBO Max recently. I finally watched it for the first time, but you will see people that just raw perseverance, and any space program, any high threat program where you're under a lot of pressure, you have to perform. It's not because they were just superhuman. It's because they had this never give up attitude.
Everyone loves Rocky because he just won't quit. I mean,
Everybody loves Rocky.
I mean, Rocky is like if you could watch a movie about make them tell you no.
Look at Jake Preston. He was great in the Cobra. And then in the Apache, he had to wear a panty on his head to overcome the right eye dominance. And then he passed the bag and then saved Tommy Lee Jones with his Apache. I don't think there's a more inspiring story.
Movies.
We already did that one. I did that one with Casmo. All right. Anyway, that's enough. Douglas, do you have anything for the Make Them Tell You No segment?
No, I'm just going to echo you again. When people ask me what it took to get through grad school, I just tell them I showed up every day.
Yeah. Step one.
Doesn't hurt.
It's writing a book.
Yeah. Doesn't hurt to have qualifications. Doesn't hurt to have natural ability, but you won't get there on that.
Yep.
Yeah. If you write a book, people have asked me that too. And not that I'm this prolific author, but I would say, they go, well, how do you write 11 books, 10 books or whatever? First of all, they're self-published. So it's not like I'm this, big fancy author, but I will say you have to write it. A lot of people get stuck in the editing phase. Like Gonky's a writer now too. You've got a book coming out.
Kid's book. It's not the same.
Well, either way, the only way you got to this point was that you applied yourself and you did it. You didn't find a million reasons why you couldn't. Look at Wombat's book. In fact, I've got both books right here.
Yeah, I think mine might have come in today.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't just go, well, it'll never work. I can't do this. You have to just apply yourself and then make them tell you no. That's it.
He's a great example of make them tell you no. I've personally witnessed, but we'll have to have him on and talk about it one of these days.
Yeah. Wait, I just said we were going to allude to it. Tell me about your hearing tests.
Oh, Duke. All right. Long story short, I ate too much for lunch. We went to hear the hearing test. They put you in this really comfy, soundproof room, and I'm pretty sure I fell asleep because it took a long time for everybody else to finish their test because we were on the same audio loop. And yeah, I had to fess up because I failed it because I was asleep. So
For those of you that don't know, the Air Force hearing test is you're in this soundproof booth with these little plastic, headphones from 1955. One's red and one's blue, right? And you can hear yourself breathing, and it's really uncomfortable. And you've got this button, and you have to click when you hear a sound. Then it yells at you because you're hitting the button when there's no sound, or you're hitting the button too many times, or whatever. And it'll just keep testing you until everybody's done. And Gonky fell asleep, so everybody came back going, why was this a 2-hour hearing test? And Mr. Gonky had fallen asleep. And
need my rest, man. Fatigue is real.
Yeah. Mr. Producer, do we have any more as we wrap this up? Comments from the kids at home?
Let me take a look. Sort of a greeting here from Master Son. Hello, guys. Recently retired Air Force flyer ECO
Nice.
here.
Cool.
Mover, love your videos, and Gonky, look forward to seeing more from you as well. Keep
Thanks,
up the
man.
great work. You guys can tell me what ECO means.
Electronic Combat
Yeah.
Officer. It's,
Yeah.
There we go.
Usually the EC-130s and the rivet joint, like that's a specialized. They're not
Super
many of them.
squirrely.
And
Yeah.
Marcus Langendorf, I knew some Langendorfs when I was
there
growing
you
up.
go.
So was the USA? That whole situation was the Netherlands.
Okay. Awesome.
Dutch Vipers.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, Gonky, I believe that will. Hold on. I got to get. Can we get rid of that? How do we get rid of that? There we go. I think that's the end, man. We've made it through an entire episode.
Wait. Psych. Just kidding.
I'm so proud of you right now. It really
Yeah.
warms my heart.
Yeah.
You were engaging.
Yeah.
You were there.
Well, when I have relatively stable internet, we need to work on your camera, though, man. I mean, just Doug. We'll talk we'll talk
I know.
afterwards.
Let's see if it does it again.
Dude.
I am
Gotta
not
work
in
it.
charge of cameras.
It doesn't like me drinking, apparently, and it's
Mm.
just Dr. Pepper. So in case anybody's wondering, but cool, man, dude. I think this was a successful podcast as we have been doing in the past. We will break these up into episodes. I hope
Yep.
everybody likes that concept, right? Because I think it's cool. I go back, I put the video clips on top, and make it a little bit more interesting. Gonky, you've been doing the same, and yeah, I think that's the way forward. I've got an Ace Combat Mission 11 coming out tomorrow. Gonky, you said you're working on some stuff on your channel.
Yeah, I am. I'm working on some other things, but it's just getting the time, man.
Awesome. Well, as always, I want to thank the viewers. 'Cause
Yeah,
we
thanks,
can't do this
guys.
without you. A
It's
lot,
awesome.
big crowd today. Almost 600 people. That's awesome.
Yeah, surprised the kid didn't try to call me.
The night is young. Doug, as always, I want to thank you for your hard work and dedication doing this.
Thanks, Doug.
You're
Hey,
a
guys.
gentleman and a scholar.
It's fun to be
We
included.
appreciate it. And Gonky, thank you.
Alrighty,
Because
we'll see you
without
next week.
Without you, it would just be the first 2 episodes.
Almost was. So,
Awesome. Well,
alrighty,
I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.
we'll
See
see
you
you
next time.